What if your silence isn't a weakness, but the very space where God moves the most? In the quiet, heaven acts. In your stillness, miracles begin. The loudest breakthroughs often come after the quietest obedience. There is a divine strength hidden in silence, a powerful force that reshapes lives when embraced with wisdom and faith. In a world that glorifies noise, instant responses, and loud declarations, the discipline to be silent stands as a radical act of trust. But make no mistake, this silence is not passivity. It is a statement of faith. It is a declaration that says, I trust God more than my ability to control the situation. You see, when you choose silence, you are not stepping away from action. You are stepping into a higher form of spiritual engagement. Silence becomes a sacred space, a battlefield where God fights on your behalf while you wait, still and trusting. And the victory? It is often far greater than anything your words could have accomplished. Let's be honest. Our natural instinct is to speak up, to explain ourselves, to defend our name. When we're mistreated or misunderstood, we want to correct it. When we're challenged, we want to rise up and prove our point. But God calls us to something deeper. He calls us to surrender, not just our circumstances, but our responses. Because the loudest statement of strength sometimes comes in saying nothing at all. Scripture reminds us in Exodus 14:14, the Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. That's not just a comforting phrase, it's a directive. God is saying, let me take this one. I see the whole picture. Your silence gives me room to move. But here's where it gets even more powerful. Silence is not just about what you don't say. It's about what you are allowing to grow. In the silence, your spirit becomes fertile ground for wisdom, discernment, and clarity. You begin to hear what truly matters. You begin to recognize the whispers of God that were once drowned out by your own voice and the noise of the world. Consider the story of Joshua and the Battle of Jericho. God instructed his people not to make a sound as they marched around the walls for 6 days. No shouting, no trumpets, just quiet obedience. And on the 7th day, after a final lap of silence, they let out a shout and the walls crumbled. The victory was rooted in their willingness to be silent before they were called to speak. That's the power of disciplined stillness. Silence cultivates faith. Every time you hold your tongue when you could lash out, every moment you choose restraint over reaction, you are declaring your trust in God's justice. And that declaration echoes in heaven. It triggers movement, because God sees your heart and he honors the sacrifice of your silence. But it's not always easy. Silence requires strength. It takes maturity to stay quiet when you have every reason to speak. It takes courage to resist the pull to react. Yet it's in that resistance that your soul grows. You become more than just a reactor to circumstances. You become a reflector of grace. Silence also protects what is sacred. When you hold back from oversharing, from unnecessary explanations, from emotional outbursts, you preserve your peace. You create a spiritual boundary that guards your heart and honors your connection with God. You stop giving the enemy weapons formed by your own words. Think about how much we speak out of fear. Fear of being misunderstood, fear of losing control, fear of being forgotten. But when we allow ourselves to pause, to wait, to be silent, we realize that our worth isn't validated by people's understanding. It's already secured by God's love. And silence can be transformational in our relationships too. When we choose not to react out of emotion, we give space for healing. When we listen instead of interrupt, we show honor. When we let go of the need to win the argument, we invite peace. Silence can be a bridge, not a barrier, if we allow it to be. Even Jesus, our greatest example, understood the power of silence. In the face of false accusations, he remained quiet. When he could have spoken to defend himself, he chose stillness. Because his confidence was not in his ability to convince others, it was in the Father's perfect will. And that's our call too, to trust that even in silence we are seen. Even in stillness, we are moving because God is moving for us. The quiet seasons are not void of growth. They are rich with unseen transformation. Don't mistake silence for stagnation. What looks like nothing on the surface is often deep work happening within. When you learn to live from this place of peace, of surrendered silence, everything changes. You stop wasting energy on battles you were never meant to fight. You stop chasing after people's approval. You stop explaining what God is still unfolding, and you start resting in His plan. You begin to understand that not everything needs a response, that sometimes the best answer is no answer. The best proof is your presence. The best defense is your character. And the best comeback is letting God speak through the outcome. So if you're in a season where your voice feels stifled, where your silence feels misunderstood, don't give up. Lean into it. Let it refine you. Let it build you. Let it teach you to trust deeper than ever before. Because in the stillness, God is doing more than you can imagine. This is just the beginning. What you gain through silence today will become the strength you stand on tomorrow. Keep walking, keep trusting, and above all, keep quiet, because God is speaking, and He's preparing something beautiful that only silence can carry. Silence is not just a moment, it's a movement from self-reliance to surrender, from striving to trusting, from reacting to responding. In your silence, you stop trying to manage outcomes and start allowing divine orchestration to unfold. That is where power truly lives, not in your control, but in your confidence that God is in control. So often we find ourselves stuck in loops of conflict because we feel compelled to say something, to defend ourselves, to correct the record. But the truth is, no explanation can shift a heart that's not open to understanding. And no amount of arguing will change someone who's committed to misinterpreting you. That's why silence can be your most powerful response. It sends a message without uttering a word. It says, I know who I am, I know who my God is, and I trust that truth will prevail without my assistance. That kind of strength intimidates the enemy. It unsettles those who expected you to unravel. It confuses those who hoped for a reaction. Because your silence says, I'm anchored, I'm unbothered, I'm covered. And what's more, God honors it. He steps into the gaps your silence creates. He fills the space with His justice, His clarity, and His timing. When you stay silent in obedience, you're not ignoring the situation. You're elevating it to a level where only God can operate. That's divine maturity. When others expect you to retaliate and you don't, they begin to see something different in you, something holy, something grounded. Because silence rooted in faith is not emptiness, it's evidence. It shows that your life is not led by chaos, but by conviction. That you don't need to control the narrative because your story is being written by God Himself. This kind of silence speaks volumes in your workplace, your relationships, your ministry. When others gossip, you stay quiet. When they slander, you pray. When they provoke, you breathe. That doesn't make you weak, it makes you wise. It's not suppression, it's stewardship. You are stewarding your peace, your power, your purpose. And in doing so, you gain access to something far more valuable than temporary vindication. You gain access to wisdom. Because silence is the breeding ground for revelation. When you're not speaking, you're finally able to hear. Not just hear others, but hear God. Hear what He's saying about the situation. Hear how He's calling you to move. Many of the answers we seek in prayer are already being whispered in the silence. We've just been too loud to notice. But when you quiet your spirit, suddenly divine strategy becomes clear. You see things you didn't before. You recognize opportunities that were always there, but hidden beneath the clutter of your own noise. And it's not just about what you hear, it's about how you see. Silence shifts your perspective. It lifts you above the noise. It gives you a bird's eye view. You're no longer caught in the weeds of emotion or entangled in offense. You rise above it. You begin to see with clarity. You begin to discern with accuracy. This is the posture that leads to breakthrough. Not striving, not shouting, but surrender. It is the stillness that draws heaven's attention. Because when God sees a heart that trusts enough to wait quietly, he releases favor. He dispatches angels. He brings justice, not always quickly, but always perfectly. And this is what makes silence a seed. A seed planted in faith. It might feel invisible now, but in due season it will bloom. Your silence today is building something you can't yet see. It's cultivating strength. It's developing roots. It's deepening your faith so that when your blessing arrives, you'll have the foundation to sustain it. So don't mistake silence for stagnation. Just because you're quiet doesn't mean you're stuck. It means you're growing in ways the world can't see. It means you're being prepared for something greater. Something that doesn't require noise to validate it. Something eternal. Let silence refine your character. Let it sharpen your discernment. Let it be your act of worship. Because when you refuse to fight battles that aren't yours, you make room for the God who never loses. And when he fights for you, the victory is always sweeter. You are not overlooked. You are not forgotten. Your silence is not meaningless. It's holy. It's powerful. It's the language of those who know that real strength isn't proven through argument, but through alignment with God's will. So take heart. Keep quiet when necessary. Speak only when led. And remember, the same God who spoke the universe into existence can speak on your behalf. You don't have to raise your voice for heaven to hear. You just have to keep your heart in position. And in that quiet place, in that surrendered silence, you will find everything you've been searching for. Peace, purpose, protection, and eventually, provision. Because when you choose to be silent and trust, you open the door for God to give you everything that was already written for you to receive. There's something deeply powerful about aligning your spirit with divine timing, and silence is the key that unlocks that alignment. When you speak too soon, you may interfere with what God is orchestrating behind the scenes. But when you wait, when you hold your words until they're filled with wisdom and led by the Spirit, you not only speak life, you speak with authority. That's the difference between reaction and revelation. Reaction is immediate, impulsive, driven by emotion. Revelation is deliberate, purposeful, birthed in silence. And when you walk in revelation, your voice carries weight, not because it's loud, but because it's rooted in truth. The kind of truth that only comes from time spent in stillness with God. You begin to realize that you're not called to speak on everything. Not every situation requires your input. Not every offense requires your defense. You are not obligated to respond to every criticism, correct every misunderstanding, or address every slight. Your silence is not avoidance, it's intentional spiritual strategy. And when you live from that place, you stop exhausting yourself on battles that were never yours to fight. You conserve your strength for the assignments that matter. You preserve your energy for the purpose God placed on your life. You start operating in wisdom rather than ego. Silence teaches you to trust God's voice more than your own. And as you practice it, you begin to find peace in not having the last word. You realize that closure is not always a conversation. It's sometimes a decision. A decision to walk away, to let go, to release, and to trust that God will speak for you in ways you never could. One of the enemy's greatest tactics is to provoke you into reacting. He'll use people, circumstances, even your own insecurities to tempt you into stepping out of alignment. But when you've trained your soul in the discipline of silence, you'll recognize those traps. You'll see them not as invitations to engage, but as opportunities to elevate. Because silence doesn't mean you're weak. It means you've grown beyond the need to prove anything. You no longer have to fight for what God has already secured. You no longer have to defend your identity. Your Father has already called you chosen, beloved, worthy. And what you find is that silence attracts a different kind of power, It draws wisdom to you. It brings peace to your atmosphere. It creates space for God to move, not just around you, but in you. Because while you're holding your tongue, God is often healing your heart. It's in that stillness that He reveals what you truly need. Sometimes it's not justice you're after, it's healing. Not an explanation, but closure. Not validation, but peace. And He gives you those things in abundance when you stop trying to speak them into existence and start receiving them in quiet surrender. The discipline of silence doesn't just shape your words, it transforms your character. You become slower to anger, quicker to listen, more discerning in your decisions, more compassionate in your relationships. You become someone who doesn't need to dominate a room to change it. Your presence speaks even when your mouth doesn't. And people notice. They may not understand it, but they feel it. They sense the weight of someone who's been with God, of someone who's chosen stillness over shouting, grace over gossip, faith over fear. Because silence in the hands of the faithful is not passive. It's a force that breaks cycles, that interrupts the enemy's plans, that sets a new tone for your life and legacy. So if you're in a season where your silence feels uncomfortable, lean in. If it feels like God is calling you to say less and listen more, obey. If you're tempted to speak just to fill the void, pause. Because sometimes that void is where God speaks the loudest. Your voice is powerful, yes, but its power is amplified when it's surrendered, when it's led by love, when it's spoken from a heart that's first been silent before God. So let your silence be sacred. Let it be worship. Let it be warfare. And when the time comes to speak, you won't just talk, you'll declare. You won't just react, you'll reveal. And every word will carry the weight of the one who speaks through you. Because in the end, it's not about being heard by everyone. It's about being used by God. And if He calls you to be silent for a season, trust that it's not punishment, it's preparation. He's shaping something within you that can only be formed in the quiet. And when the time is right, when the silence has done its work, He will raise your voice in power. He will give you the words that break chains, that heal hearts, that lead others into His presence. Until then, stay quiet, stay grounded, stay faithful. Your silence is not empty. It's echoing in eternity. And what God is preparing for you in the stillness will be worth every quiet moment. When you learn to live from a place of intentional silence, you gain access to a kind of peace that the world can't understand and the enemy can't touch. It's not that you don't have thoughts. It's not that you don't feel hurt, disappointment, or the sting of injustice. It's that you've chosen to take those feelings and lay them at the feet of God, rather than broadcasting them into a world that cannot heal you. Because here's the truth, some things are too sacred for public consumption. Some wounds are too tender to explain to those who can't comprehend your depth. Some dreams are too precious to share before they're ready to bloom. Silence becomes a sanctuary for your soul, a covering for your process, a boundary for your heart. It's in this sanctuary that you begin to hear God clearly, not through the loudness of external noise, but in the stillness of internal surrender. He begins to whisper truths to you that are too profound for surface-level conversations. He starts revealing His plans, His protection, and His provision for your life in ways you would never have noticed had you been busy speaking, planning, or defending yourself. This silence becomes your sacred training ground. It sharpens your spirit and softens your heart. You begin to discern when to speak and when to hold back, when to lean in and when to walk away, when to let your silence speak louder than any defense you could offer. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. That's not avoidance, that's anointing. Think about Jesus. How many times did He choose not to answer the Pharisees? How often did He retreat to be alone, to pray, to listen? He was the Son of God. He had every right to speak, to teach, to correct. And yet He valued silence as much as He valued speech. because he knew that silence often precedes clarity, that stillness often prepares the soil for miracles. And so it must be with us. We must unlearn the habit of needing to be heard and relearn the posture of being led. We must value quiet as much as we value action. We must see our silence not as absence but as alignment. Because when God finally calls you to speak, your words will carry power. They will carry healing. They will carry presence. Because they were born not from impulse, but from intimacy with Him. That's why the enemy fears your silence. Because he can't manipulate what you haven't spoken. He can't twist what you've entrusted to God. And he can't derail what you've surrendered in stillness. In silence, you reclaim your authority. You take back what noise has tried to steal, your peace, your direction, your discernment. You no longer react to life, you respond to God. And that changes everything. You walk differently. You engage differently. You carry yourself with the quiet confidence of someone who doesn't need to explain their calling to those who were never meant to understand it. Someone who knows that fruit speaks louder than defense. That transformation is more convincing than talk. That peace is more powerful than proving a point. So let your silence grow roots. Let it anchor you. Let it heal you. Let it remind you of who you are and whose you are. Because when the world pushes you to explain, justify, or retaliate, heaven is simply asking you to trust. To trust that your silence is not the absence of a voice, but the presence of wisdom. To believe that in the quiet, God is not just watching, He's working. That while you're being still, He's setting things in motion that your striving never could. And when the time is right, you won't need to force your voice to be heard. God will make a way for your life to speak. He will lift your name in rooms you never entered. He will open doors no man can shut. He will prove your purpose in ways you never could through argument or ambition. Until then, let your silence be filled with prayer. Let it be saturated with worship. Let it be grounded in scripture. Let it be a place where your soul is refined and your vision renewed. Because what's birthed in silence will never need to shout to be seen. And know this, God is not silent about you, even when you are silent about yourself. He is speaking your name in heavenly places. He is orchestrating connections, aligning moments, and weaving purpose into every detail of your story. Your job is not to explain, it's to remain. To remain faithful, to remain peaceful, to remain silent when He says, "Be still and know that I am God." That's the promise. That's the posture. And that is the kind of silence that brings you everything God ever promised. When you commit to the discipline of silence, you create space for God to reveal what noise has kept hidden. So many people chase answers, clarity, or direction by speaking more, asking more, analyzing more. But the real breakthroughs often come in moments of surrender, not striving. When your voice quiets, your vision clears. And what once seemed uncertain begins to make sense. Not because the circumstances changed, but because your spirit aligned with God's. Silence doesn't just prepare you for blessing, it protects it. There are seasons where God gives you a glimpse of something sacred, a calling, a relationship, a door that's about to open. And it's in those moments that silence becomes your shield. Not everyone needs to know what God is doing in you. Not everyone is equipped to carry your vision. And if you share it too soon, it may be trampled by people who see only with natural eyes. That's why silence is so strategic. It keeps what's growing within you safe until it's strong enough to stand. It keeps you from inviting voices that could plant doubt instead of faith. It keeps the enemy guessing because he can't attack what he doesn't know. And it keeps you in step with the pace of heaven instead of rushing ahead to satisfy your own timeline. Look at Mary, the mother of Jesus. When the angel told her she would give birth to the Savior of the world, she didn't go out shouting it from the rooftops. She pondered it in her heart. She carried it in silence. And in that silence, the miracle grew. Some of the most powerful things God is doing in your life right now don't need an audience. They need a womb. A protected place where vision can be nurtured in faith, not dissected by doubt. A sacred space where God's voice becomes the loudest and your own desires are refined in His fire. This doesn't mean you never speak. It means you speak with intention. You don't rush into conversations just to fill the silence. You don't share from a place of insecurity or the need for validation. You speak when God gives the release. And when you do, your words carry the authority of someone who has been alone with Him. Because when your voice comes from silence, it carries heaven's weight. It isn't just noise, it's direction. It isn't just opinion, it's truth. And it cuts through the clutter of the world with supernatural clarity. You don't need to defend every step when you walk with God. You don't need to explain every decision when you've heard His voice. When you walk in obedience, the fruit will speak for you. The outcomes will confirm the process. And those who once questioned your silence will eventually witness your harvest. In fact, your silence will become your testimony. Not the absence of sound, but the evidence of surrender. The proof that you trusted God when you didn't have all the answers. The witness that you followed His whisper over the world's volume. And that kind of testimony doesn't fade. It echoes into eternity. It teaches others a new way of living. It challenges the culture of constant commentary. It models a different strength. One that's not loud, but lasting. One that's not reactive, but rooted. One that finds its power not in speech, but in stillness. So don't fear the quiet seasons. Don't rush to break the silence just because it feels uncomfortable. That discomfort is where depth is formed. That quiet is where transformation begins. You are being shaped in ways that words can't explain. And what's coming next will be worth the wait. Because here's the secret. The quieter you become, the more you can hear. Not just with your ears, but with your spirit. You begin to discern divine timing. You begin to recognize real from counterfeit. You start to see doors not as chances, but as callings. And you start to live with a kind of wisdom that doesn't need to announce itself, it simply operates. Let this silence teach you. Let it reset your pace. Let it strip away everything that doesn't align with your purpose. And let it draw you into deeper communion with the one who already knows your next step, even when you don't. Because God doesn't need your explanation to elevate you. He doesn't need your voice to validate your future. He just needs your heart in position, surrendered, still, and ready. So be silent. Let it mold you. Let it protect you. Let it grow what no one else can see. And when the time comes, your life will speak in ways that words never could. And when your life begins to speak, rooted in silence, cultivated in trust, it won't just inspire others, it will glorify God. Because those around you will realize this. Your elevation wasn't achieved through self-promotion, noise, or hustle. It was birthed in secret. It was sustained by surrender. It was shaped in silence. And when people see the fruit, they won't just see you, they'll see the one who planted the seed. That's the ultimate purpose of your silence. Not just personal peace or emotional maturity, but divine glory. God uses quiet vessels to carry loud messages. He uses still hearts to produce bold moves. He chooses those who will wait patiently in the shadows before shining in the light. And that's what separates temporary success from lasting impact. Anyone can make noise, but it takes spiritual discipline to build a life that speaks with weight, legacy, and eternal consequence. That's what your silence is preparing you for. A life that matters, not because it was loud, but because it was obedient. So yes, be silent, but don't be passive. In your silence, pray with intention. Fast with focus. Listen with depth. Worship even when you're unsure. Let your inner life become so rich that when you do speak, when you do move, it comes from overflow, not emptiness. Because one day God will prompt you to speak, and in that moment, your words will carry the power of every silent season you endured. They will reflect the wisdom gained from every unanswered question. They will echo the strength born from every surrendered battle. And the world won't just hear your voice, they'll feel your anointing. That's what happens when silence is led by the Spirit. It doesn't suppress you, it strengthens you. It doesn't limit your influence, it multiplies it. It doesn't diminish your light. It sharpens it so that when it shines, it pierces through darkness with precision and purpose. The truth is, God often works in silence because He's more interested in your transformation than your comfort. And silence is where the most profound transformations happen. It's where pride dies and humility rises, where noise is replaced by nuance, where striving gives way to surrender. So if you're in a season of silence, embrace it. Let it purify your motives. Let it refine your vision. Let it prepare you for a level of impact that isn't about popularity, but about purpose. Silence, when surrendered to God, becomes a supernatural catalyst. It creates space for divine interruptions. It makes room for redirection. It shields you from distractions, and it prepares you to step into places where only the prepared can go. You are not being ignored. You are being instructed. You are not being punished. You are being positioned. You are not being silenced. You are being made strong in the quiet so that you can speak with holy authority when the moment is right. So as you walk this journey, remember, silence is a gift. Use it. Cherish it. Grow in it. Because the ones who learn to listen in the silence are the ones God trusts to lead with their voice. And when He releases you to speak, to move, to build, do so with the confidence of someone who has been forged in the fire of silence and found faithful. Be still. Be strong. Be silent. Because your silence is not the end of your story, it's the foundation of your legacy. And everything God has for you is already on the way. Wait quietly. Trust boldly. Move only when He says so. And you will receive everything you need, at the perfect time, in the perfect way, for the perfect purpose. Thank you for staying through this powerful reminder that sometimes the most courageous and transformative thing you can do is be silent. In a world that moves at full volume, your willingness to pause, to wait, and to listen is not weakness. It's wisdom. It's strength. And more than anything, it's faith in action. Silence isn't about retreating. It's about rising internally. It's where you gather what the noise has scattered. It's where you allow your spirit to reset, your mind to clear, and your heart to realign with the voice that matters most, God's. You may be in a place right now where you feel pressed to speak, to prove, to fight for your position or explain your decisions. But what if the breakthrough you've been praying for doesn't come by doing more, but by stepping back and letting God step forward? What if the blessing isn't delayed, it's simply waiting on your surrender? In silence, you're not losing time. You're building trust. In stillness, you're not being passed by, you're being prepared. Every silent moment is a seed of maturity, peace, humility, clarity. And when the time is right, those seeds will bloom into favor, strength, and opportunities no amount of striving could manufacture. Trust that silence is not the end of your influence, it's the beginning of your authority. And when your voice does return, it won't return in reaction, it will return in revelation. You'll speak from a place of knowing, not needing, from peace, not pressure, from purpose, not pride. Let go of the fear that your silence makes you invisible. God sees, God knows, and God is not idle. He is working, orchestrating, moving pieces behind the scenes you can't yet see. Your job is not to shout louder, it's to trust deeper, to believe that the one who holds your future doesn't need your voice to validate your value. He already decided you were worthy the moment He created you. So lean into the quiet. Let it comfort you. Let it change you. Let it make you stronger, not smaller. Let it teach you that sometimes the most powerful response is no response at all. Not because you're weak, but because you've chosen wisdom. Because you trust that when the time is right, your silence will speak for you louder than any argument ever could. And if you need a space that reminds you of these truths daily, a voice that lifts you when life gets heavy, stay close to Think Fresh Daily. In the final stretch of this message, we invite you to keep your heart open, your spirit still, and your faith rooted. Subscribe, stay connected, and let this be your daily reminder. Silence isn't empty, it's sacred. And from that stillness, everything you need is already on its way.